And just take a few moments to arrive. Scan your body. Notice if you're feeling any areas of discomfort or any areas of tension. Just try to let those all go. Be present. Be present with your body. Be present with your practice. Our bodies tend to store our emotions in ways we don't even know. Just take a moment to see if you can notice anything different about how you're feeling. And just start to focus on that and your breath. On each inhale, feel the sides of your ribs expand. And on each exhale, feel the hollowing out of your belly. Try to deepen your breath, making each inhale just a little longer. Maybe hold your breath at the top before releasing. On your next inhale, try to get your breath to reach down through your back and the lower parts of your lungs and ribs. Feel your chest rise. On your next inhale, stretch your arms overhead, stretch your toes out long. You can start to wiggle your fingers, circle your wrists, wiggle your toes, and maybe circle your ankles. Maybe flex and point the toes. And hug your knees into your chest. Stay here for a moment. You can rock side to side if that feels comfortable. You can extend your feet towards the ceiling and slowly start to separate your feet. Come into like a wide V with your legs. Grab the outside edges of your thighs, or you can pull down on the inside of your thighs, giving yourself like a nice little stretch down. And just soften into the stretch for a few cycles of breath. If you want, you can also bring your elbows down to the mat and just support your legs. Let gravity do the work. Take 2 more deep cycles of breath here. Slowly start to bring your legs together. Hug your knees into your chest. Maybe rock side to side. And when you're ready, you can rock and roll up to a seated position. You can cross your legs in front of you. Make sure you're grounded down through your sit bones. Lengthen through your spine, sit up nice and tall. Inhale, reach your arms overhead. Exhale, fold forward. Slowly start to walk your hands to the right side. Feel a stretch in the side, the left side body. If your hip starts to come off the mat, just slowly back off. Start to walk closer towards the middle until both of your hips are grounded. Slowly start to walk back towards the middle. Maybe walk your hands a little further out. And then start to walk your hands over to the left side. And walk your hands back to center. Slowly start to rise back up to a seated position. You can switch your legs if you'd like to. So whichever one was in front, bring it to the back and then flip over. So we get both hips to stretch out evenly. Just make sure you're grounding down. We're gonna interlace our fingers behind us and just start to stretch out through the chest. Squeezing the shoulder blades together. You can maybe lift your head and look towards the ceiling. You can stay here, or you can slowly start to bring your arms up high above you and bow forward. If you bowed forward, slowly start to rise back up. Release your hands, shake that out. Bring your arms out wide to a T. Bring your right hand across your chest. Hook your left arm under. Yep, you got it. Feel a nice stretch through your right shoulder. Stay here for 2 more cycles of breath. Release your arms back out to a T. Bring your left arm across your chest. Hook your right arm under your left. Hug your arm in. Stay here for 2 more deep breaths. And release. Keep your left hand on the mat. Stretch your right arm overhead. Tilt over to the left side. You can turn your heart towards the ceiling, maybe gaze up towards the ceiling. And come back to center. Place your right hand on the mat. Stretch your left arm overhead, start to lean over towards the right side. Your heart can tilt towards the ceiling, gaze can be towards the ceiling. Slowly rise up, come back to center. Flip over, let's come on to tabletop, hands and knees. Ground down through your hands. Make sure your knees are in line with your hips, wrists in line with your shoulders. And we're gonna do the C curve thing we did a few classes ago. I'm not sure when it was, but so we're going to look over our right shoulder and squeeze in, bringing our shoulder towards our hip, making like a C with our body. And on each inhale, come back to center and then go over to the other side. Let's take a few of these with your breath. Squeezing on your exhale, coming back to center on your inhale. Complete your next cycle and then find stillness in the middle. Bring your right foot up to meet your hands. Wiggle your foot a little bit in front of your hands and flip your toes up. Sink your hips back. We're going to come into a straight leg runner stretch. You can inhale, rise up, and then exhale, fold over that right leg. Soften in to the stretch in your hamstring. Bend into the front knee, start to tilt forward, come into a low lunge. You should feel a really good stretch in your left hip flexor. Start to straighten that front leg, come back to that runner stretch. Square your hips. You can inhale, rise up, exhale, and fold over that leg. Feeling a stretch in your hamstring. Bend your right knee, come back into that low lunge. Stay here for 2 more cycles of breath. Ground down through your hands and bring your knee back to tabletop. Thread your left leg through to meet your hands. Start to wiggle your toes forward. Peel your toes off the mat. Start to straighten the front leg and sink your hips down. Come into a runner stretch. Inhale, halfway lift here, and exhale, melt over that front leg. Soften into the stretch. We're starting to waken up those hamstrings. Bend your left knee, come forward into the low lunge. Sink low. Feel the stretch in your right hip flexor. Feel your toes off the mat, straighten the front leg and start to sink back. Square your hips. Inhale, halfway lift here, and exhale, fold over your left leg. Soften into the stretch. Bend your left knee, come into a low lunge. Stay here for 2 more cycles of breath. Step your left foot back to meet your right knee, come into tabletop. You can push back to child's pose. Soften in, feel the weight of your hips against your heels. Bring your hands together in a prayer position in front of you. You can stay here or slowly start to lift your fingers off the mat and bring your hands to the base of your neck. You can stay here or you can start to wiggle your elbows a little forward to really feel a stretch in your triceps, your shoulders. Take 2 more slow, deep breaths here. Release your hands and start to walk back up to a tabletop position. Reach your left leg high behind you. Reach your, did I say left leg? Whichever leg is lifted, raise your opposite arm in front of you. Tighten through the core. If this is too much, you can lower your back leg. We're gonna stay here for 1 more deep breath. You have the option to stay here, or you can try to reach back and grab the foot. Tighten through the core. Find a spot to focus your attention. If you have your hand grabbing for your foot, you can try to push your foot against your hand to feel a stretch in your thigh. Stay here for 2 more breaths and release everything down to the mat. You can come back to a child's pose. On your next inhale, rise back up to tabletop. Lift whichever leg you didn't lift last time, and opposite hand. Option to lower your leg. You can stay here. You're going to stay here for 2 more deep breaths, and then you can reach back for your opposite foot. You don't have to do the same thing on each side. Tighten through your core. Stay here for 1 more deep breath, and then release down. You can take another child's pose. And slowly rise back up. Ground down through your right hand. Keep your right knee on the mat. You're going to come in to any variation of side plank that you'd like to take. I'm sure you all know I love side plank by now. Go ahead and lift your foot and hand off the mat. You can come into full side plank. Tighten through the core, lift your hips high. Ground down through the right hand. Grow tall through your fingers. Stay here for 2 more deep breaths. And lower everything down. Come back to tabletop and set up for side plank on the other side. You have the option to stay here and keep your foot down or lifted, or come into full side plank. Stay here for 2 more deep breaths. And lower down, come back down to tabletop. Ground down through your hands, tuck your toes under, come back to your first down dog. If this is your first down dog of the day, feel free to pedal out your feet. Come up onto your tippy toes. Bend your knees down. Hover here for 2 more breaths. Slowly start to stretch your legs out and slowly lower your heels down towards the mat. Lift your right leg high in the air. Fan open your hip. Bring your heel towards your buttocks. Stretch your right leg high back up in the air. Thread it through for low lunge. Ground down through your feet. Slowly start to rise up to high lunge. Reach your arms overhead. Tighten through your core. Find stability here. Anchor your back foot down. Slowly start to come into warrior 2. Sink maybe a little lower here and settle in. Flip your palm, reverse your warrior. Stretch your left hand down your calf. And rise back up to warrior two. Bring your hands back down to frame your foot. Spin your back heel up. Keep your left hand on the mat. Start to twist open to the right side. Bring your right arm overhead. Stay here for 2 more deep breaths. And bring your right hand back down to frame your foot. Step back to down dog. Take a big deep breath in here. And exhale. Lift your left leg high in the air. Fan open your hip, bring your heel towards your buttocks. Straighten your left leg. Thread it through for low lunge. Ground down through your feet. And start to rise up to high lunge. Square your hips. And bring your arms overhead. Find your balance here. Take a few slow, deep breaths. Anchor your back foot down. Slowly start to open up to warrior two. Gaze over your front fingers. Settle in. Maybe sink a little deeper into the front leg, making sure your knee is tracking towards the outside of your little toe. Flip your palm. Slowly start to reverse your warrior. Feel the stretch in your left side body. Slowly rise back up to warrior two. Bring your hands back down to frame your foot. Spin off your back heel. Place your right hand on the mat. Start to twist open to the left side. Maybe bring your left hand overhead. Stay here for 2 more deep breaths. Bring your left hand back down to the mat. Step back to down dog. Come up to a high plank. Slowly lower all the way down to the mat. Inhale, come into cobra or up dog. Exhale, lower down, push back to down dog. Inhale, reach your right leg high in the air. Exhale, bend your right knee, bring it to your right elbow. And stretch it back. Bend your right knee, bring it to, try to touch your nose. And stretch it back. Bend your right knee. Cross your body, bring it to your left elbow. And stretch it back up. Thread your knee through, come into low lunge. Ground down. Slowly start to rise up to low to high lunge. Bring your arms overhead, shoulders away from the ears. Take a few slow, deep breaths here. Anchor your back foot down, come into warrior two. Flip your palm, reverse your warrior. Come back to warrior two. Straighten your front leg. Slowly start to hinge forward, come into triangle. Take a few slow, deep breaths here. Make sure you have a micro bend in your front knee. Start to bend your front knee, ground down through your feet, and rise up to warrior two. Bring your right elbow to your right thigh. Come into extended side angle. You have the option here to bring your arm down or bind if you'd like. Gonna stay here for 3 more deep breaths. Slowly start to rise back up to warrior two. Spin your hands back down to frame your front foot. Spin your back heel, step back to down dog. Come up to plank. Option here to take a vinyasa. We will all meet in down dog. Reach your left leg high behind you. Bend your left knee. Bring it to reach your left elbow. And push back to three-legged dog. Bend your left knee. Bring it to reach your nose. Come back to three-legged dog. Bend your left knee, cross your body, bring it to touch your right elbow. Come back to three-legged dog. Thread your left knee through, come into low lunge. Ground down through your legs and feet. Slowly start to rise back up to high lunge. Bring your arms overhead. Settle in here. Take a few slow, deep breaths. Spin your back heel down, come into warrior two. Settle in here. Flip your front palm, reverse your warrior. Slowly rise back to warrior two. Straighten your front leg. Start to hinge with your hips. Bring your left hand down to the mat, right arm above. Come into triangle. Try to make sure your shoulders are in line, opening through your chest. Gaze can be straight in front of you, or you can look overhead. Take a few slow, deep breaths here. Start to bend into the front knee, ground down through your feet. Find your stability and slowly and with control, start to Rise back up to warrior two. Bend your left elbow, place it on your left thigh, reach your right arm overhead, come into extended side angle. You have the option to stay here, or you can bring your left hand down to the mat, or you can take a bind. Stay here for 3 more deep breaths. Slowly start to rise back up. Spin your hands down, spin off your back heel, step back to down dog. Take a big inhale here. And a big exhale, let it all go. Inhale, reach your right leg high in the air. Exhale, thread it through for low lunge. Slowly start to lift your left leg off the mat. Come into standing split. Stay here for 2 more deep breaths. Exhale, lower your foot back down to the mat and fold forward. Inhale, come into a halfway lift. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale, circle sweep arms to the sky. Exhale, bring your hands to heart center. Inhale, reach your hands overhead. Exhale, swan dive forward. Step back to down dog. Inhale, reach your left leg high in the air. Exhale, thread it through for low lunge. Start to set yourself up for standing split on this side. Maybe walk your hands a little forward, ground down through your left foot, and start to lift off and come in to standing split. Toes should be facing down towards the mat, top of your foot. Stay here for 3 more deep breaths. And lower your left foot down, meet your right. That was opposite, I apologize. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale, circle sweep arms to the sky. Exhale, bring your hands to heart center. Inhale, reach your arms overhead. Exhale, swan dive forward. Step back to down dog. Inhale, reach your right leg high in the air. Exhale, thread through to low lunge. If you have a block, you can keep it near you. We're gonna go into half moon. If you need it, place it right in front of your right hand, or you can come over towards a wall, whichever you prefer. Start to lift your left leg off the mat, twist open to the side, bring your arm overhead, come into half moon. Flex your left foot. Your toes should be facing the long side of your mat. Twisting open to the side. Stay here for 3 more deep breaths. Bring your hand back down to the mat. Step back to low lunge. Ground down through your hands, step back to down dog. Inhale up to plank. You can take a vinyasa here. We will all meet in down dog. Reach your left leg high in the air. Exhale, thread it through for low lunge. If you have a block or a wall, go ahead and set yourself up for half moon on this side. Maybe bring your block a little bit in front of you. Start to lift your right foot off the mat. Twist open your hips. Reach back, maybe bring your arm overhead. Stay here for 2 more deep breaths. Lower your right foot down to the mat, come back into low lunge. Step back to down dog. Take a big deep breath in here. And exhale, let it all out. Come in to plank. You can take a vinyasa here. We will all meet in down dog. Lower your knees back down to the mat. Start to rise up. We're going to take camel here. There's a few different variations. So your hips and knees are in line. You're going to stay nice and tall. You can bring your hands to rest on your hips behind you, your lower back. And you can slowly just start to peel your heart open. Maybe drop your head down. You have the option to stay here, or you can start to reach down for your heels. Push forward through your hips and your heart. Maybe let your head hang low. Stay here for 2 more deep breaths. And slowly start to rise back up. Go ahead and bring your hands back down to tabletop. Tuck your toes. Come back to down dog. Inhale, reach your right leg high in the air. Exhale, thread it through, set up for pigeon. Bring your knee towards your right wrist. Your toes can be up towards your left hand, but if that's not accessible, just make sure your top of your foot is down towards your mat, toes are pointing towards the back of your mat, so that they're like a diagonal line from your knee to your toe. Otherwise, if you have it in your practice, you can bring your ankle over towards your left hand. Your foot will make more of a 90-degree angle. To make this a little deeper, you can try to stretch your back foot back a little further. Sit up nice and tall and slowly start to fold forward, making sure your back stays in a straight line. You can bring your head down to rest on your hands or stretch your arms out in front of you. Take 3 more slow, deep breaths here. Feel the stretch in the outside of your right hip. Soften in. Slowly start to rise back up. Tuck your back toe, ground down through your hands, and come back to down dog. Go ahead and fan your feet, maybe rock your hips side to side, and then come back to stillness. Reach your left leg high in the air. Thread it through. Go ahead and set up for pigeon on this side. Make sure if you're not in the full position where your foot is over towards your right hand or right wrist, make sure your toes are tucked under and you're making a diagonal line towards the back of your mat. That protects your knee. For a deeper stretch, go ahead and wiggle that back leg a little further. Sit up nice and tall. And exhale, slowly start to fold forward, making sure your back stays nice and straight. You can bring your arms out in front of you or place your head on your hands. Soften in. Stay here for 3 more deep breaths. Slowly start to rise back up. Tuck your back toe. Ground down through your hands. Step back to down dog. Take 1 more deep breath here in your last down dog. And exhale, lower your knees down. Come onto a seated position. Your knees can be up towards the ceiling. And we're going to come into boat pose. Bring your shins parallel to the mat. Stretch your arms out in front of you. Option to grab behind your hamstrings or lower your feet back down to the mat. Tighten through your core. Start to feel the shake. Stay here for 3 more deep breaths. Lower everything down. Bring your hands back behind you. Come into reverse tabletop. Ground down through your soles of your feet. Lift your hips off the mat. Maybe sink your head back behind you. Lower your hips down to the mat. Turn around, come into a wide leg seat. Ground down through your sit bones. Inhale, reach your arms overhead. Exhale, turn towards your right toes. Slowly start to fold forward, reaching for the soles of your feet or your shins. Stay here for 2 more deep breaths. Slowly start to rise back up. Come back to center. Sit up nice and tall. Inhale, reach your arms overhead. Slowly start to rotate towards your left toes and bow forward, reaching for the sole of your left foot or your shin. Soften in. If both of your hips aren't grounded down onto the floor, you can back off a little until they are. Slowly start to rise back up to center. Bring the soles of your feet together. Grab for your ankles. Sit up nice and tall. Slowly bow forward. Make sure your chin is away from your chest. You have the option to stay here, or you can start to walk your hands out in front of you for a little bit of a deeper stretch. Start to walk back up to a seated position. Bring your knees together. Bring the soles of your feet down to the mat. Reach for the outside edge of your knees, or you can grab on the back of your hamstrings. We're going to slowly lower down. We want to try to work that core just a little bit more before we get down to the ground, coming into a supine position. Reach your right leg high in the air. Exhale, bend it over. Bring your ankle over your left knee and reach back behind you towards your hamstring. Come into a seated figure four stretch, or reclined figure four stretch. You can keep your hands on the back of your hamstring, or you can reach for your shin. You can also cradle your right leg in if that's in your practice. Soften in here. Take one more deep breath here and release the soles of your feet back down to the mat. Reach your left leg high in the air. Cross your left ankle over your right knee. Reach behind your hamstring or for your shin. Come into a reclined figure four. Soften in. Release your feet back down to the mat. Release your hands. Ground down through the soles of your feet. Lift your hips off the mat. Come into bridge pose. Tighten through your glutes. You have the option to stay here or bring your hands together. Walk your shoulder blades in towards each other. Stay here for 3 more deep breaths. Feel strong through the soles of your feet. Release your hands. Slowly lower all the way down to the mat. Bring your hips back down to the mat. Slowly windshield wiper your knees from side to side. And come back to center. Hug your knees into your chest. Stretch your feet up towards the ceiling. Stay here for a few cycles of breath. Feel the weight of gravity working on your legs. Hug both knees into your chest. Bring your arms out to a T. Drop your knees down to the right side of your mat. Gaze over your left shoulder. Slowly bring your knees back to center and then drop them down to the left side of your mat. Gaze over your right shoulder. And bring your knees back to center. Hug both knees into your chest. You have the option to stay here, maybe rock side to side, or grab for the outside edges of your feet and come into happy baby. Hug both knees into your chest. At this time, if there's any other asana you need to do to complete your practice, feel free to do so. And when you're ready, find a position that feels comfortable for you for Shavasana. Maybe grab a blanket, maybe put your legs up the wall, flip your palms, settle in. Close your eyes, start to sink into the ground. Just take a moment to let that work settle in. Slowly start to deepen your breath. Maybe invite some movement into your body. You can wiggle your hands and your feet. Maybe stretch your arms overhead. When you're ready, hug both knees into your chest and roll over onto your side. Maybe take a moment here, take a deep breath before you find your way back up to a seated position. Close your eyes, bring your hands to your heart. Take a moment to honor yourself for being present in your practice today, for showing up consistently, for taking care of yourself. I am grateful that you showed up to share your practice with me today. Namaste.